Have you ever really thought about what it took to create that smartphone in your pocket? I mean, sure, we think of Apple, Google, Samsung, but the real story, the full story, it's so much more surprising. It involves deep space exploration, a bunch of frustrated inventors, and a really core economic idea that pretty much shapes our entire world. Okay, let's get into it.
So to really wrap our heads around the incredible jump that made your phone even possible, we gotta go back in time, way back, to what was truly one of humankind's greatest achievements.
So on one side, you have the Voyager 1 spacecraft. This thing was launched back in 1977, and it was the absolute peak of human ingenuity, a total marvel of computing that we sent to the farthest corners of our solar system. And then on the other side, well, there's the device you use to order a late-night pizza. It sounds almost ridiculous to even compare them, but the difference in their power is just, well, it's mind-blowing.
Back in '77, Voyager's brain, its super sophisticated computer, could handle about 8,000 instructions per second. And for the time, that was absolutely state-of-the-art, a true engineering masterpiece.
And your smartphone? Oh, it doesn't just beat that. It completely obliterates it, processing around 14 trillion instructions per second. That isn't just an improvement, that is a fundamental shift in reality, a revolution in computing power that has literally rewired our entire world.
So what gives? What's the secret ingredient here? How in the world did we get from Voyager to the phone that's in your hand right now? Well, the answer isn't just about a few smart entrepreneurs in a garage. Actually, many of the core technologies that make your smartphone smart, they didn't come from the private sector at all.
Just think for a second about the basic features of your phone. The internet? Yep. The GPS that tells you where to go? That too. These cellular networks, even the voice activation that lets you talk to your device, every single one of these foundational technologies was developed with massive, and I mean massive, government support. Take GPS. The system that powers 1 million apps was developed over decades by the U.S. Department of Defense. It's a technology we just take for granted now, but it was born entirely from public investment.
And this whole thing reveals a really fascinating economic puzzle. Why don't private companies, the ones driven by profit, create these foundational technologies themselves? Well, the answer lies in something called the spillover effect, and it explains why innovation isn't as simple as just, having a good idea.
So this gets at what economists call the inventor's dilemma. Let's say you create something totally revolutionary. Well, studies show that you'll probably only see about a third, maybe up to a half, of the total money it generates. All the rest of that value, it spills over to everybody else, to your competitors who copy your idea, to other industries that build on it, and to society as a whole.
And history is just filled with examples of this. Eli Whitney's cotton gin, Alan Turing's computer, Gordon Gould's laser. These are all cases of brilliant minds whose personal payday was just a tiny, tiny sliver of the immense value their inventions created for the world. And that creates a huge problem, right? Because if you know you won't get the full reward, why would you take on the massive risk to invent something in the first place?
Now this spillover, it has a formal name, a positive externality. It's really just a benefit that someone gets without having to pay for it. Think about it like this. Your neighbor plants a beautiful garden. You get to enjoy the view, right? But you didn't have to pay for the flowers or do any of the work. That's a positive spillover. So here's the crucial distinction we have to make. Private benefits, that's just the profits that the company who did the inventing makes. But the social benefits, that's the company's profits plus all those positive spillover effects for everyone else. And the key thing to remember is the social benefits are almost always way, way bigger.
Okay, let's make this really concrete with an example. Imagine a big drug company is thinking about a new research and development project. They look at their own potential profits and they decide, okay, it's worth investing $30 million. But the total benefit to society, people living longer, healthier lives, new research paths for other scientists, is actually worth $52 million. And that difference, that gap between what a private company will invest and what society actually needs, we call that the innovation gap. In this case, society is missing out on $22 million of potentially life-changing research simply because the incentives for that one company just aren't big enough.
So, if private markets, left to their own devices, aren't going to fill this gap, how do we make sure this crucial research actually gets done? Well, this is where public policy has to step in.
So that's the multi-million-dollar question, right? How do we bridge that gap? How can we nudge that company to invest the full $52 million that we as a society really need?
Well, governments basically have a three-pronged approach. First, they protect ideas with things like patents. This gives inventors a temporary monopoly so they can actually profit from their hard work. Second, they step in and directly fund that super risky, long-term research that private companies just can't justify. And third, they sweeten the deal for private companies with things like tax credits, which makes it cheaper for them to invest in their own R&D.
Now, it's totally true that private industry foots most of the R&D bill in the US. But that 21% from the federal government, you could argue that's the most important slice of the whole pie. It's the seed money. It's for the big, foundational ideas, the kind of risky bets that private markets just won't make, but that ultimately lead to world-changing breakthroughs like the internet.
You know, the same logic, this idea of really valuable things that private markets just struggle to provide on their own, it applies to a lot more than just technology. It brings us to a related idea, something economists call public goods.
Okay, so a public good has two very specific traits. And because of these traits, it's really, really difficult, if not impossible, for a private company to sell it for a profit. Let me break down why.
First, it's non-excludable. That means you can't stop someone from benefiting from it. Think about national defense. You can't really protect your neighbor's house from an invasion, but, not yours. Second, it's non-rival. This means one person using it doesn't stop someone else from using it. Me listening to a radio station doesn't use up the radio waves, so you can't listen to the same station.
So these two features together, they create the classic free rider problem. I mean, think about it. If you know you're going to benefit from something, whether you pay for it or not, the smart move for you is to let everyone else chip in while you just enjoy the benefits for free. And if everyone thinks that way, well, then the thing never gets provided in the first place. This is exactly why we pay for things like national defense or streetlights through taxes. It's how we solve that free rider problem.
So why does all of this matter? Why are we digging into positive externalities and public goods? Well, because understanding these ideas is absolutely essential for tackling our biggest shared challenges. There's a really powerful idea here, one championed by thinkers like the economist Mariana Mazzucato. It's that private markets are, by their very nature, pretty risk-averse. They tend to resist betting on those huge, uncertain, society-changing ideas. It's often governments, funded by all of us, that can take those big swings on the really long-term research that ends up becoming the foundation for everything else.
And that leaves us with a final and pretty crucial question. When you think about artificial intelligence or green energy, the next wave of innovation is going to require enormous investment. The question for all of us is, what is the right balance? What's the right mix between public and private funding to build the technologies that are going to define our future?